Welcome to episode number 55 of the Active Geek podcast. So today is a good day, a happy day, because it's Stan Lee's birthday. He turns 94, which is amazing. And today is kind of a bad day, too, because it's the first full day after the death of Carrie Fisher, who is also known as Princess Leia. For those of you who might not be geeks but listening to this podcast, she was the greatest princess in all of mankind, in my opinion. So this episode is celebrating the birthday boy, as mentioned earlier, Stan Lee. We're going to talk about everything that Chuck and I could really think of about the man, and all his creations, some that are good, some that are bad, some that are really great, what he meant to us, what he meant to the world, if he overshadows certain people, or if there's going to be another Stan Lee to come in our lifetime. So without any further ado, this is episode number 56 of the Active Geek podcast, entitled Stan Lee. Happy birthday, Stan, if you're listening. Chuck, this episode is very special.
Yes, it is.
Today is December 28th, 2016, and it's a very special day. 94 years ago, Stanley Lieber was born. And he was born in New York City. That man later became known as, specifically, Stan the Man Lee, the father of comic books.
Yes.
So we're going to focus on Stan Lee. He's like an uncle to me. An uncle that I've never met.
Uncle Stan.
And I think I've mentioned that before, that, I've never met this man. I've always wanted to meet this man. But, he's influenced my childhood more than most of my teachers.
Yeah.
And then most of my family. So he's an extended member of the Lululo tribe. When you think of Stan Lee, when you hear the word Stan Lee, what words come to mind?
Great. He's one of the most creative minds in our time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd put him in top 3. I think Walt Disney's number 1.
Okay.
Stan Lee, Jim Henson.
Okay.
And we've done a Disney podcast, and we've done a Henson podcast. So now it's only fitting to do a Stan Lee podcast. And it's just, he shaped my childhood.
Yeah.
And my adulthood.
Yeah.
And he's been there for me.
Yeah.
Like you said, like an uncle. Uncle Stan.
Yeah, Uncle Stan.
And he's just, we're watching his creations right now.
Yeah.
And
You look around the studio, and there's a ton of Stan Lee creations.
there's Stan Lee.
Yeah. I got two Stan Lee pops and a Stan Lee Dorb. He's my man. I love Stan Lee. So great and creative come to your mind.
100%.
Those are the words. Creator was one of the ones, because again, it wasn't just the Marvel creations that he's had. There he has off the cuff creations as well that we'll talk about, but he's also taken those risks and made heroes that made it, and made heroes and villains that did not make it, and we'll also talk about that as well. I consider him an underdog too, because this is a man who, started as an assistant in 1935 at Timely Comics. You know what I mean? And it's a completely driven individual to get from, assistant to executive of his own company. And also, he is a genius. Think about it, when Batman and Superman were made, he could have just continued to make people with capes. Mm-hmm. This guy comes out and makes teams, and he makes villains from different planets and heroes from different planets, and
his creations all over the board.
Yeah, creatures that he doesn't pigeonhole the market. Everything is different. And yeah, you can say that some of the stuff is copied from DC, with and they're like, they need it. They have Batman, so we're going to make Moon Knight, and they have Adam, we're going to make Ant-Man, and so on. But there's the characters that Stan Lee has really had his deep hand in. DC hasn't attempted to create, like a Hulk, like a Spider-Man, stuff like that.
Well, DC did in
Young
Clayface? Justice, whatever that Spider guy was. I don't know.
Oh yeah, Stealth Spider or whatever the fuck his name was. That was terrible. But you think, I think creator, underdog, genius, and driven are words that come to mind with Stan Lee. Overall, in general, what are your thoughts on the man besides what you just said?
Kind of what we were just talking about. I think he made some of the most memorable characters of all time.
Yeah. Yeah, when you think of Stan Lee, you specifically think of Marvel,
Oh, yeah.
right?
It goes hand in hand.
Did you know that he worked for DC?
Yes.
Yeah, he worked, it was Stan Lee and Jim Lee. When he retired briefly, he worked and he did this thing called Just Imagine comics, and it wasn't like he took, like, Catman, you know what I mean? Or, like, Blue Beetle. He took staples, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and wrote their stories. So, like, a lot of people might not know that about him. But, like, he is, he's somebody who never let go of his childhood. You know what I mean? And at the time, comics were kind of cheesy and, they're for kids. And he made them more adult-driven. Yeah. And he wanted kids to read them. But also, like, he worked in the army. He was in the army. He repaired telegraph poles. He was a man.
He was
a Renaissance man who just so happened to write comic books. And I think that's great. He even wrote comics for soldiers. So they had something to kind of deal with when the world was so tough. And he took his comics and had his hand in the whole Captain America Red Skull battle when Red Skull was a Nazi. You know what I mean? So he was just, I don't know, my thoughts on him is he's one of the most influential people the world has ever seen.
Yeah.
And I think people are going like, oh, well, there's Tesla and there's Einstein, but for me, he's one of the most influential people for me.
I agree.
What makes Stan Lee so special?
He crafted these characters that people can relate to. And I think that's the main part. Like, Spider-Man. He made a teenage superhero.
We've all been bit by spiders.
Yeah. But he made a teenage superhero. It wasn't Robin, who was a sidekick.
Yeah.
It was this teenage, nerdy kid getting bit by a spider and becomes this huge superhero.
He was normal. Robin was at least an acrobat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And he was just this kid. Went on tour with a school trip, got bit by a spider.
Yep.
Boom. And, he makes relatable characters. And not only that is, I think what also makes him great is he made, also, again, like, relatable, but, like, he made it to where it was one big universe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I remember it was a very awesome special. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It was Stan Lee being interviewed by Kevin Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And it was years. I think I got the DVD as a special when the first Spider-Man came out.
Okay.
The Tobey Maguire came out.
So was 1999? 2001?
Yeah, it was, a while ago. And he said he wanted a world where, and he did this, Spider-Man needed a lawyer. Matt Murdock was the lawyer.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Daredevil. It was Matt Murdock.
Yeah, and it's not fictional cities either.
Yeah, and that's what I love about it, too. You can go to DC. You can't go to Star City. You can't go to Metropolis, but you can go to New York.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to go to Gotham.
No.
If it's Camden, you don't want to go there.
A lot of the movie takes place in New York.
Yep.
The Spider-Man universe.
The entire Defenders take place in New York.
Yeah, Hell's Kitchen. And you know what I mean? Like, you can go there. And you can go, all right, I'm in Hell's Kitchen right now. You can't go, I'm in Metropolis.
Yeah.
So, he made these worlds come to life.
Yeah, and then you think about it, like, he's from New York. He's a kid from New York. And he had a chance to, like, really make something special of his city. You know what I mean? There's crime everywhere.
Yeah.
He took the crime that he probably saw in the news and transformed it into his universe with Spider-Man and, Iron Man and Luke Cage and all these characters. When you said he created this whole universe, right? There's multiple Earths on this universe, kind of like with DC, but they're all one. Like, you can't just go, you can't go to nowhere and like, that might be Earth 71 and Captain America doesn't exist. No, they know each other. Like, they're all curious and they all interact with each other. It's not just like, you need like, in the movie setting, in the cinematic universe, they can all interact, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the DC universe, as far as entertainment, they can't interact. because it's policies and rules and shit like that. But what really makes him special for me is that like this is a man that when comics were first created, it was very cookie cutter, very cheesy, and he challenged the comics authority to change their codes, and he wanted again comics to be geared towards adults, but the kids to understand it. So he created these teenage superheroes that kids could relate to, but the message behind it, like when Spider-Man's uncle dies, you know what I mean? Grieving, anger, revenge, stuff like that. Like most young kids don't understand. They're not getting that message. However, adults that pick it up or watch the movie, and they're like, oh, you know what? I felt that way when so-and-so died, or when this injustice happened to me. So I was able to harness it in a way where I have to be the hero as opposed to being one of the bad guys. So he did make his comics super relatable. And he also challenged the game. You know what I mean? Like, oh, there's a huge world war. I'm going to put my comics out there, and it's going to be a real life issue. You know, I'm going to send Captain America to fight the Nazis and to punch Hitler right in the face. And anyone could be Captain America. You could be Captain America reading that book over in Germany and say, you know what? I'm probably not going to punch Hitler in the face, but I'm going to make a fucking message. And I'm going to make a stand. And I'm going to take out as many Nazis as I possibly can. But also, he's a member of 2 Hall of Fames. He's a member of his friend, Jack Kirby's Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. He's also a member of the Will Eisner Award Hall of Fame. And he's got a Hollywood star. Now, I know you have to pay for your Hollywood star, and it kind of cheapens it for me, but this is a man who deserves his Hollywood star.
Yeah.
It's like you know how like you go to a store or like a restaurant and you eat the biggest steak and they put your picture on the wall? You've earned that. Stan Lee has earned that star. He doesn't have to put money up.
No.
You know what I mean? So he makes it special because of all the characters that he's made, but also the man that he's become and how he's kind of influenced people's childhood, because not only has he influenced yours and mine, but he's influenced every grown person who's out there wearing a Captain America or a Spider-Man shirt or a Deadpool shirt or an X-Men shirt. Any superhero shirt in the Marvel universe has been they bought that because of Stan Lee.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Of Stan Lee's creations, or the people that Stan Lee has hired to create these characters. Mm-hmm. You know, you go. We're going to Rogue One today, right? So, or we went, whatever. And we see somebody in a Batman shirt. And if we were to ask that person, who created Batman? They're not going to know. Who created the Green Lantern? Oh, they're not going to know. Some people might even say Stan Lee did, because they don't know the difference between Marvel and DC. However, when you say who's Stan Lee, they're going to know exactly who it is, whether they're young or they're old, because he's been in TV. His cameos are everywhere. He was in Princess Bride 2. Did you know that? That's not even a fucking Marvel movie.
You mean Princess Diaries?
Yeah, whatever. Princess Bride, Princess Diaries.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was one of the.
He was one of the wedding guests.
Yeah, he was getting married. So you have he's all over, and people know him. He's in Shield. He's in the movies. You know, I would like to see him in a DC, like a cameo in a DC movie. It'd be pretty cool, right? Just walking the streets, not focused on him, but you see him, and you're like, "Is that Stan Lee?" And they're like, "Oh, kind of, maybe," because I'm sure not only did he influence the writers that have come through Marvel, like a Todd McFarlane and stuff like that, but he's also probably influenced Frank Miller's and Jim Lee's and all these people in DC Comics as well. Is that fair to say?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, he's it's kind of like Disney, and that's where we're going to move into it, but where Disney influenced people in animation, Stan Lee has influenced people in cartooning, in comics.
Yeah.
So how does he size up with Disney? I know you said he's number 2.
Yeah, I mean, Disney created these characters. Disney created an empire. Mm-hmm. And now, so much that Marvel's part of that empire. Mm-hmm. But I think, he sized up well because, you know what I mean? And he was a nobody. And like you said, he did odd jobs. He was in the military.
He was a working man. He wrote fucking obituaries before. That was his first writing job, was writing obituaries. It's crazy.
And, he was just a normal, everyday man. And it's the same with Walt. They each had a vision. And they had a vision and created these worlds that people can relate to. Mm-hmm. And not only relate to, but fantasize about. Yeah. So, you know, the struggles of everyday life, and you know, you can go and escape.
Yeah, there's always a message behind the story.
All the time. And, you know, you can escape reading comics, watching Disney movie, like, so I think he sized up pretty well.
Okay, so what, kind of like a follow-up question, what would propel him above Walt Disney? It's a very tough question, right?
One.
I'll give you how they size up, and kind of think about that while I'm talking. But with Stan Lee and Disney, I think they're kind of on the same level. Disney's characters like Mickey and Goofy and Donald and Minnie and all those iconic characters, right? They're recognizable, right? Not just in America. They're recognizable in Asia, in Europe, in Africa, in South America, all the continents. I would like to say that Spider-Man and the Hulk are recognizable in all the continents as well. Yeah. You know what I mean? They've influenced children. They've influenced adults, right? They've ushered in a new kind of creative process as far as, like, people. I think they're 1A, 1B. You know what I mean? They're both, again, you said they're regular guys. They are, and they were born into depression. They're people who really needed to kind of make it in the world. Not kind of, but they needed to make it in the world. And they took two risky professions. Yeah. You know what I mean? Animation, which was expensive, especially in the Depression, and comics, which both of them could have been, if they weren't done right, Stan Lee could have been a janitor somewhere. Yeah. Walt Disney could have been a librarian, just reading the books, not writing about the books. For me, and this might sound like blasphemy, I think in current times, because Walt Disney is dead, Stan Lee is placed above him now.
See, that's what I was thinking about, because if you go, you know, you hear Walt Disney coming, but people more think of the company than they think about him. Yeah. And Stan Lee, you think of Marvel, you think of Stan Lee. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you know Stan Lee because he's out there. Yeah. And piggybacking what you said, like, I agree with you. And because of, unfortunately, Walt is...
I mean, he's frozen, but he's dead. Yeah. It's fair to say that he's dead, right? Yeah. But, like, think about this. Like, who's more popular today?
Stan Lee.
No. Spider-Man or Mickey Mouse?
I like Spider-Man.
Exactly, right? It's kind of like we talked about a while ago. We talked about how when I went to Six Flags, they were transforming everything from Warner Brothers cartoons to superheroes. Yeah. You know what I mean? Kids today really might not know all the Disney characters. You know what I mean? They don't know about DuckTales. They don't know about Chip and Dale. You know what I mean? So, but they sure as hell know about Spider-Man. And they know about Hulk and Iron Man. And they'll start knowing about Daredevil. Not just Charlie Cox, but they'll know about Ben Affleck's Daredevil. You know what I mean? So I think the way of the world now is geared more towards superheroes because they're in the forefront. So I think Stan Lee sizes up perfectly with Walt Disney. I feel like they would have been best friends. I wonder if they ever met.
Maybe we'll write a fictional story, Stan and Walt, The Adventures.
Dude, could you imagine? If we wrote, imagine we're back in the glory days of three of our favorite creators, right? And me and you are just walking around. We talked about going back in time. Yeah. Let's say we go back in time and we walk into a pub in New York, right? And at the bar, Stan Lee, Walt Disney, and Jim Henson.
That'd be awesome.
What the fuck are they talking about? Money? Yeah. Right? Are they just counting money?
That's the thing. I don't think they did it for the money.
They did it for the love.
They did it for the love of what they did.
Could you imagine being like a fly on the wall in a conversation between those three?
That'd be amazing.
I feel like they had to be friends because they were popular at the same time. They were coming up in the think about the 70s, right? Was Disney alive in the 70s? No. Really? When the fuck did he die?
Long time ago.
Walt Disney died before the 70s?
I'm gonna look it up, but I believe so.
I don't think he died before the 70s. Well, think about it. So let's say in the 70s they're all together. And they're in their forefront, and they're just like, hey Stan, you remember when you created Spider-Man? When did he die?
66.
Really? When the fuck was he born?
01.
Jesus Christ, my timeline. I
You're
went back.
way off.
Yeah, crazy. All right, maybe they didn't hang. They probably met each other though. They had to have.
Jim Henson probably didn't.
No, Jim Henson maybe not, but Stan Lee probably met Walt Disney.
Maybe.
He's what 21 years younger than Walt Disney. So who knows? I just think I think if they were friends, dude, that would have been amazing. Could you imagine if they were all alive at the same time? Like,
I mean, they were. I mean, Henson was born in 36, so...
Oh, so maybe they all did meet each other.
Maybe.
That'd be great. Oh, my God. Maybe like a... Kind of like when Batman met Superman at Lex Luthor's house. But it would have been a better dialogue. Oh, I would have loved that. Another thing about Stan Lee and Disney, and we kind of went on a little tangent there of hypotheticals, but that's the beauty of us. Again, this might sound blasphemous, though. Stan Lee made original characters. Mm-hmm. Some of the characters that he created were not originals. They were pretty close to rip-offs of other characters. Yeah. Walt Disney made some creative characters, like original characters, but he also ripped off a lot of like old stories. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like Beauty and the Beast, Snow White, Cinderella, all these stories, they were pre-existing properties that he adapted into, real life. So as far as creativity, are they both in the same level, or Stan Lee more creative because he made more original content?
I think they're both. Well, not only Walt created these characters, he created, like I said, an empire.
Yeah, he did.
You know, he had envisioned Disney World and Disneyland and all that. And so I think they're both creative as well. Because, yeah, Stan Lee created more characters, but Disney had a greater vision.
It's true. Yeah, he knew, he was a businessman.
Yeah.
I feel like Stan Lee was an artist or a writer who was thrown into the businessman role. You know what I mean? Where he went from Timely Comics and then turned it into Marvel, where there were, he probably put his right hand men with him, and they did everything, and he just was like, you know what, I'm going to contribute to this, and you guys do the logistics of everything, right? Let's talk about another person that Stan Lee was kind of close with, who's just as creative as Stan Lee, in my opinion, and that's Jack Kirby.
Yep.
Do you think that the fact that Stan Lee has lived so long, does it kind of overshadow the contributions to the comic world that Jack Kirby has made?
I mean, I think the problem, like, Stan Lee was the words behind, you know what I mean? He created these characters. Mm-hmm. But Jack Kirby made you see them.
But he also created a shitload of characters, too.
And he did.
Stan Lee didn't create Captain America.
No.
That was a Jack Kirby creation. So, like, that's Marvel's golden boy.
And I think the fact that he is alive, but also, too, he's the face of Marvel. And has been for years. So, even when Jack Kirby was alive, you know what? And I hate to say it, like, Jack Kirby is more of an unsung hero. Because he doesn't get credit as much as he should. But I think with Stan Lee, and not only that he's lived so long, I just think with him being the face of Marvel kind of overshadows. Yeah,
like from what I hear about Jack Kirby, he wasn't a social guy. Where Stan Lee is at the premieres, and he's like, you wouldn't see Stan Lee, or you wouldn't see Jack Kirby in Deadpool.
No.
You know what I mean? Even if he was alive today. So, having a more upfront, in-your-face kind of vocal leader like Stan Lee doesn't replace what Jack Kirby has done. I've never heard in an interview Stan Lee shitting on Jack Kirby.
No.
You know what I mean? And anything. Like, I mean, you and I, when I moved in here, we watched the documentary of Stan Lee. You know what I mean? And he was talking about Jack Kirby in such a high regard. I'm sure they had their differences, just like every creator would have their differences. I feel like Stan Lee being alive kind of does overshadow Jack Kirby because you don't hear much about Jack Kirby other than the end credits, like, oh, character created by Jack Kirby. I wish more people would know what Jack Kirby contributed to the comic book world, but I think Stan Lee took the friendship that they had together and took what was supposed to be a fad with comic books and turned it into a conglomerate and was able to corner the market. You know what I mean? With movies and television and cartoons and comic books. And, there's not a lot of huge comic book companies out there.
No.
Because they know that they can't compete with the two big guys. You have Skybound and Image and Dark Horse and Valiant and stuff like that. But if you don't read comic books, you don't know those.
No.
You know what I mean? You only know DC and Marvel. And I think that's partly because of the people Stan Lee has surrounded himself with and the characters that he has created. When we think about Stan Lee's creations, right? He's had 363 character creations, right? I can't even create one character, right? And stick with it. What is your all-time favorite Stan Lee creation?
Spider-Man.
I knew you were going to say it.
But it's
your boy. You got it tatted on you.
I got it tatted on me.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Yeah, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. I've talked about this in multiple podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Love Spider-Man. We're watching Spider-Man cartoon right now.
Yeah. Because we're adults.
We're mature adults.
Yeah, watching cartoons and talking comics. It's beautiful.
But, I always have. And then again, like I said, he was relatable when I was younger. So, yeah, that is my favorite and always will be my favorite.
Yeah, and, it's hard to argue how cool Spider-Man is.
Yeah.
It's somebody who is just 100, like, he is a beast. And he is the Batman of Marvel Comics.
Oh, yeah.
His rogue gallery is huge. Like, we're watching an episode with Scorpion, but, you think of, there's Lizard, there's Kraven, there's so many other characters in his arsenal that it's kind of spun off into separate lines, and, it's spilled over. You see Kingpin.
The Sinister Six.
Yeah, you see Kingpin in a Daredevil television show, and you see, hopefully we'll see Venom and Carnage on the big screen again. And Toxin. See all these, and Anti-Venom. See all these symbiotes. God, a symbiote movie would be amazing. Just taken from the planet. And that'd be so amazing. Spider-Man isn't my favorite.
No, I didn't think it was.
He's up there. My favorite is the X-Men. You think about it, in a time where comics were, like, teaming was on the rise. You had the Avengers, also created by Stan Lee. You had the Justice League. They were
Fantastic Four.
Yeah, also created by Stan Lee. You had these teams where they're the best of the best, the strongest of the strong, the smartest of the smartest. Then you bring the X-Men in, and they're outcasts. They're different. They're mutants. Not only does it, you talk about Spider-Man being relatable. I don't have laser beams coming out of my eyes. You know what I mean? But you have X-Men who were being persecuted against in their world by humans. And at a time, races were being persecuted against. Genders were being persecuted against. Sexuality was being persecuted against. Mental illness was being persecuted against. There was so much stigma on people who were different.
Well, that's one of the reasons why he created it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why it's my
favorite. To show
favorite.
the adversity. And I don't know if I've talked about this before, but do you know why he made them mutants?
Because you did talk about it. Because you can have a different story for everyone.
Well, and it was in the Kevin Smith thing. He said he was lazy. He didn't know how to come up with, someone got, okay, I came up with radioactive spider.
Gamma ray.
All right, what's next? They're born with it.
Yeah, well, that's perfect.
Boom. And it was easy, but also smart at the same time.
Yeah, because, if you're being someone that's persecuted against, you were born into that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You didn't just get bit by a bird sat on your shoulder and you become gay. You know what I mean? Or you stepped in a puddle and you became Muslim. You know what I mean? It's not like you were born into that. So having somebody, again, you don't have adamantium claws coming out of you. You can't control the weather. But you can understand what they're going through when they have to hide in public or when they have to, be different in front of other people. Like, you can't truly be yourself unless you're with your people of your kind, I guess, as far as the X-Men. That's my favorite, but I also really like the Inhumans.
Yeah.
I really think the Inhumans are... That's a tough group. Again, like, space mutants, essentially. And now both of them in the comic book world, they're fighting each other, Inhumans and X-Men. Did you know Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan, is an Inhuman?
No, I did not.
That's how she became Ms. Marvel. Terrigen missed.
I know that.
Did you also know she's from New Jersey? Hence why she's a New Jersey Avenger.
I didn't know that, and I hate it.
She's from Jersey City. So when we were bitching about her being on the cover of the U.S. Avengers, I can totally understand why. Because,
I understand why. I still don't like it.
Yeah, but she's an Inhuman. She's on the they're doing a new line, Inhumans vs. X-Men, and she's right on the front lines, right next to Medusa and.
So that means we might see her.
Lockjaw, and no, I don't think we're going to see her in the. Well, they might. We might see her in. I can see her more likely in Shield.
That's what I meant.
I thought you meant Inhumans television show.
Yeah.
Because she's Inhuman. What if she's the Inhuman that Simmons was working on? I know it was a man, but what if it was Mr. Marvel?
I don't know.
I don't know. We're gonna do a top 5. We haven't done top 5 in a hot minute. What are your top 5 Stan Lee creations? Now, before you get into it, I have a question. Was this harder than you expected it to be?
Yeah.
Like, I went over all his characters.
Yep,
and I was
so
like, I had like 17 lists. I was like crossing out this guy. I was crossing out this guy. And I was like, oh shit, this is so tough. Like, Scorpion.
Yeah.
He created Scorpion. Scorpion's awesome. He created Groot. Groot's awesome. Let me see what you got. Do you think we have the same?
Some.
I think we might have 2 as the same. See what you got.
Spider-Man.
Okay.
Magneto.
Okay.
Fantastic Four.
Okay.
X-Men. Loki.
Okay. I didn't do the teams. I did solo.
I did teams because he did create them. And
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So, we only had 2.
Spider-Man and Loki.
No.
Spider-Man and Magneto.
So Spider-Man and Magneto. So I'll give them an order. Daredevil.
Mm-hmm. He made my cross off.
Daredevil, Spider-Man, Kraven the Hunter, because I fucking love Kraven. I love hunters and sports. I don't hunt at all. Like, that's the funny thing. Like, but I love the competitive sport. And when you have a hunter that comes in to hunt a human, oh, dude, that storyline is fantastic. Kraven's Last Hunt. Did you ever read that?
No.
Fucking read it. Oh my god, you like Kraven?
Yeah.
Like Spider-Man?
Yeah.
You love it. Just love this book. Magneto is number 4, and then Black Panther. I love panthers. They're my favorite animal. But, like, I had Groot on my list. Dude, like, I was crossing names off left and right. Doctor Strange was on my list. Iron Man was on my list. Hulk was on my list.
Octopus was on
Yeah.
there.
I don't really like Hulk. I don't know. Am I wrong for not liking Hulk as much? I think he's kind of like, I get it. Like, he's a super strong, angry green monster. The storyline is really cool that you can, like, a normal dude, when he gets angry, turns into it. I think Hulk's cheesy. Started out like this gray fucking blob.
Yeah, it was kind of like a Frankenstein.
Yeah. Then he turns into this green rage monster. I think he's cheesy to me because of how much shit he's gotten in the movies.
Yeah.
And I think about that Ang Lee movie. Dude, that is such a shit movie.
There's a green Jose Canseco. That's what he looked like.
Stanley was Stanley in that one?
I don't know.
I don't think which one was the one with the juice? Edward Norton, right?
That was
the Incredible Hulk.
That was Eddie Norton.
I don't think Stan Lee was in Ang Lee's Hulk.
Maybe that's something we have to look up.
I would think that if your last name is Lee, I'm talking to you, Ang. If your last name is Lee, you need to put Stan Lee in that. Right? Yeah. Ang Lee, Stan Lee, perfect. Like, they'd be a good family. What's his worst creation?
I think we actually might have the same one.
I don't think so.
And
what you got?
He created the plot for this story and the character, but didn't write it. Asbestos Man.
Nope, it's not Asbestos Man. He didn't even make my top 5 worst characters.
Oh my god. Do you know who he is?
Oh, I've heard about him.
Asbestos Man, it was a Dr. Orson Karloff.
Great name.
He had no superpowers.
So the name, Orson Karloff. Boris Karloff, Orson Welles. Guarantee you that's where it came from.
100%. He first appeared in Stranger Tales,
War of the
111,
Worlds.
August 1963. He had a asbestos suit. That he wore an asbestos suit that was highly toxic and resistant to heat.
Nice.
What the fuck?
Awesome. Awesome. You know, some of the ones that made my list of ones that, like, when I was trying to pick the worst were like Stiltman.
No, I was looking at Stiltman.
Plant Man. Porcupine. Marvel version of Catman.
Yeah, I've seen Catman.
They were, but the one that took the cake was Kid Colt.
I did not see. I've seen all the other ones. I did not see Kid Colt.
Kid Colt was published through American Comics. It was a subordinate of Marvel, and he was a cowboy comic book character, and I think it was a bad execution. It was like the 2-draw kid, and he's like, "I'm gonna get you." Like, I read some of his blurbs. It was awful. It was like, I don't think why put a cowboy in there? When's Spider-Man gonna ever fight a cowboy? You know what I mean? Like, think about it from the picture. I don't like Kid Colt. I think he was stupid. He's got a dumbass name too, Kid Colt.
Come on, Asbestos Man.
No, I'd rather take Asbestos Man. I can see Asbestos Man being in S.H.I.E.L.D. over Kid Colt. They go into a building and it's
Kid Colt or Arm Fall Off Boy.
Arm Fall Off Boy. I'd take him.
Yeah,
because he's a villain.
We incorporate Arm Fall Off Boy in an episode. Goal.
Kid Colt was a hero. I think he was terrible. You know who else Stan Lee made?
Who?
Man-Thing.
You know who else he made? Fing Fang Foom.
Yeah, he did make Fing Fang Foom.
I love Fing Fang Foom.
I'm shocked he didn't make it to your top 5. Was he on the list?
He was an honorable mention.
Oh my god.
Fing Fang Foom. Big giant.
Dragon. Oh,
dragon,
everybody knows. Purple Pants.
And Purple Pants.
Let me go back to something that I mentioned before. Hulk didn't make either one of our list.
Nope.
It's crazy. And he's a core member of the Avengers, one of the first Stan Lee creations as far as comics. We don't like him.
I like him. He's not my favorite.
But he's not like, I put Kraven. I put 2 villains over Hulk.
So did I.
I think, yeah, Loki. Wait, now hold on. Is it Loki because of the television, the movie universe?
I mean, I was in the comics
or in the
when I was a kid too.
Because he looked super fruity in the comics.
Those big horns.
Yeah, man, that tight latex suit that he was wearing.
And technically, he didn't create Loki. He created what we know of Loki.
Yeah, because Loki was a
Norse god.
Yeah,
the god of mischief.
Mm-hmm. So cool that he adapted that.
And that's kind of the reason why I like it, because he took something creative, a god.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were talking about with Walt.
Yeah.
Where Walt took pre-existing characters and stories and wrote his own. Stan Lee takes Loki and Thor.
And I had Thor up there too, but I was like, I got only one spot, and I always like the villains a little more.
Absolutely. One of my honorable mentions was Gwen Stacy, but only because she becomes Spider-Gwen, and I know Stan Lee had no input on that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just I'm comfortable with my list. So he's involved in this thing called the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think you've heard of it.
Yeah. Little tiny thing.
What are your thoughts on, 1, him being in it, and 2, all the directors utilizing him?
I love it. I think it's great. I think it pays homage to, know where you come from.
Yep. And
they wouldn't be making a John Watt who's doing Spider-Man Homecoming wouldn't be making a Spider-Man movie if it wasn't for Stan Lee.
Absolutely.
So, it's kind of pay your dues where they should be paid.
Yeah, be grateful.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have this job and you wouldn't have this success if it weren't for this company. Mm-hmm. And if it weren't for this man. The company wouldn't exist if it weren't for this man. And you'd be putting out fucking fan films of shit. And you realize the movies that he's in, for the most part, make a lot of money.
Yeah.
The Marvel properties that he's not in, i.e. Fantastic Four, 2015, he was not cameoed in that. Didn't make any money. So you know what I mean? And Josh Trank didn't pay homage and didn't thank Stan Lee for it. He said, I'm going to shit on your first team character. The first comic book team in general was Fantastic Four, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm going to pretty much shit on everything and fuck what you said. this is what's going to happen.
And he did. He shit on him.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that he's in the MCU, he's also in the Fox Marvel universe, because that's separate.
Yeah.
That's not
all the
considered
X-Men.
MCU. All the X-Men. He was in the first two Fantastic Four.
He wasn't in Wolverine.
He was not Wolverine.
But he was in the most recent one, right? X-Men Apocalypse?
Yeah.
He was in Deadpool.
Deadpool.
Where he's got ass and titties in his face. But, like, he's in all these movies because they're being grateful. Mm-hmm. They know. He was in S.H.I.E.L.D. And he's been in... He physically hasn't been in the Netflix universe, but...
He was in Agent Carter.
He was in Agent Carter. But he's pictured in the Netflix universe. And something that you haven't watched, and this won't spoil anything, but Agent Coulson in Slingshot has a picture of Stan Lee, and you see it.
That's cool.
Yeah, so he's even cameoed in a 3-minute short episode.
Yeah, webisodes.
Which is amazing. I think you should watch that. I think
I'll probably watch it.
I'll talk about that in the Geek Gallery. There's a theory out there that Stan Lee, in at least the Marvel Cinematic Universe is concerned, he's the same character throughout, and he's like the Watcher.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think it's just baloney.
Baloney?
I think it's baloney.
Does your baloney have a first name?
Malarkey.
Malarkey baloney, I love it.
Malarkey, it's a bunch of malarkey.
A bunch of malarkey. What the fuck time did you go back to?
I'm thinking Stanley.
Baloney and malarkey.
But no, I think it's bullshit. I think, it's just trolls trying to connect, and it's, they're looking into it more than it is. They're paying homage to a great man and a great creative mind, and that's what it is. And I don't think he's a Watcher. I don't think, it's a greater scheme, a greater plan for him to do anything. I think it is what it is. He cameos, and that's it.
I'm on the other side of the fence.
I know you are.
For one,
you don't think it's malarkey.
I don't believe the theory. I would like to. I would really like it to be, God willing, he survives the next few years, and in Avengers Infinity War, when they go to space, they get marooned on a planet, and he comes out and he's the Watcher. And it goes back through all the cameos of where he's been, like Bucky's like, oh, I remember him. Tony remembers him from being Tony Stank. And, Rocket remembers him from, being an old perv. You know what I mean? I think that would be great. That would be the ultimate homage.
It would be amazing.
Because think about it. No, I don't think it's going to happen either, but I would love it for it to happen. He wanted to play Odin. He also wanted to play J.J. Jameson.
I think he'd be a better J.J. than Odin.
Oh, God, yeah. And you really can't compete with Anthony Hopkins.
No.
He's a knight. You know what I mean? So, I think, personally, that would be a beautiful send-off in the Marvel Universe. That's his last scene. He's done. He can retire and live his life. Right? Mm-hmm. That'd be a fantastic thing. Is it going to happen?
I don't know.
If Marvel hires me like I've been hoping for them to hire me, it's going to fucking happen.
Call the Active Geek guys.
We've been petitioning to work for Marvel for a year now. I've been trying to do it for my whole life. But, if that happens, I would shit my pants. So don't sit next to me during Infinity Wars, because I might not be wearing my Depends that day. Okay? What's your favorite Stan Lee cameo? He's had 35 cameos and 2 scheduled.
The funniest one, there was 2 that I laughed.
Okay, let me see if we have the same ones.
The stripper announcer in Deadpool, I thought was hilarious, and Tony Stank.
Tony Stank was hilarious. Like, you're waiting for him. You're like, he's in the movie.
Yeah, and then he comes up. He's like, "Package for Tony Stank."
Mm-hmm.
And then Don Cheadle.
Yes, Tony Stank. Mr. Stank's right here. Like, that was beautiful. My favorite is Guardians of the Galaxy. Because you got Rocket being like, look at this old pervert. Like, sitting there, he's trying to hook up with the chick. Like, come on, Gramps, get out of here. Like, I thought that was my favorite. But Stan Lee in a strip club is something I've never, ever thought of.
I wish we'd seen the movie together. Unfortunately, we didn't.
Yeah, we were states apart.
Yeah,
I was in Florida.
Worlds apart. And I seen it and I just laughed. I was like, I actually sat next to a 10-year-old. in the theater that I guess his dad didn't think it was going to be bad.
What it was.
And the movie was sold out. I bought my tickets, way before.
Yeah, we buy our tickets in advance because we're real fans.
And
we like to break records, son.
And the dad wasn't even sitting next to the kid. The dad was sitting behind us. So I'm sitting
with his popcorn on his lap.
So I'm sitting, in recliner seats next to a 10-year-old, and the whole movie, his eyes were popping out of his head.
Yeah, and then that scene hits, and he's turned around probably shaking his head.
And then at the end, the dad's like, "Do you like the movie?" He was like, "Yeah."
I bet he did. I bet he felt something. Christ Almighty! I had a conversation at work with someone, and they were like, "If you ever have a kid, would you take them to see Deadpool in theaters?" 10, probably not.
No,
maybe 13. By that point, they've already known what their body is and what happens. I feel like a couple years from now, there's not going to be an FCC, and we're going to see nudity on TV, on cable.
I mean, my little one, she loves the superhero movies, and she's like, "Can I see Deadpool?" I was like, "No." She's like, "When can I?" was like, "When you're 30."
When you're 30? But 16 is probably good.
30.
Well, there's no dicks in it.
30.
30, okay. It's a little strict, but I get it.
She can date and watch Deadpool at the same time. That's when she's allowed to date. 30.
It'll be on fucking Turner. It'll be on TV Land by the time she's 30. All right, let's move on from the Marvel properties. We're going to focus on Stan Lee's non-Marvel properties. So he did Big Hero 6.
That's technically a Marvel property, but he didn't have anything to do with it.
It's not a Marvel Studios.
No, but it was from a Marvel comic.
Yeah. But it started in Japan first. So, we'll start about that. I'll hit you with some other non-Marvel properties, and you tell me what you think. Your favorite, Karakuri Doji Ultimo.
Oh yeah, I love
it. Which is a Good vs. Evil anime, which is huge in Japan, by the way.
Would not know.
Karakuri is the main character. Okay? Then he's coming out in 2017 with a new project. Have you heard about this? It's called Back Channel. It's about a high school comic. It's a high school comic. So he's going back to the Peter Parker roots. I think I might buy it. Stan Lee property.
Yeah.
Buy the first one. If I like it, I like it. If I don't, see it. But he's doing that. Do you remember, God, maybe 2006 Stan Lee comes out and makes the NHL Guardians?
No.
So he made the mascots for certain teams, comic book characters. I'll forward you the link, dude. It's amazing, some of the stuff that he did. I wrote down my favorite. The Wild. He made look like fucking Werewolf. The Blue. It was Take the Question and Green Hornet.
The Blue.
Yeah, for the Blues.
Oh.
For St. Louis Blues. He made the character called the Blue. And then the Coyote. They're all awesome. It's a hybrid mutant coyote.
How was the Flyers?
I didn't see it on the list. It was top 10, but I think it was he had a puck for a face or something. Yeah, it was probably stupid. Well, the Flyers logo is pretty stupid. Yeah. Let's be honest. I'll find you that link. Maybe at lunch I'll show it to you. And then my favorite, Stripperella.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on Stan Lee's non-Marvel properties?
I think, with the success of Marvel, he can take some liberties and stray from the norm and kind of do some passion projects, and I think that's
that's what they are, just passion projects.
Yeah.
Well, then that goes back to, let's backtrack a little bit. Stan Lee and a strip club. He made Stripperella, so maybe he's a huge strip club fanatic. That was remotely successful. That had 2 seasons. What did it come on
That was Pamela Anderson.
Yeah, it was TNN back then, right? Turned into Spike. Stripperella. Did you ever watch it?
No.
I watched it.
Did you?
I did. It was funny.
You were boned up.
Oh, super boned. I watched it for sure. I watched it. The Guardians thing was dope. No interest in Karakuri Doji Ultimo. No. This back channel stuff I'm really looking forward to. But Big Hero 6, his inclusion in Big Hero 6, the movie, and now he's going to be in the series, is really cool.
Yeah.
Because Baymax is a very recognizable character.
Yeah.
So that's a collaboration between him and Disney now, essentially. So he's a big Disney piece of Disney now. What do you think his net worth is? Stan Lee. Think he's a billionaire?
No.
Okay. How much do you think he's worth?
$272 million.
That's very specific. No. As per Google, 50 mil.
What?
Yeah. 50 mil. I think they're wrong. That was as of 2016. I don't think that's right. Maybe that's in like stuff that they got off his taxes. My man's probably got Swiss bank accounts all over.
Maybe not, because back then there wasn't money.
Yeah, you know what? He probably didn't get to, like, I don't know, maybe, who knows? 50 mil kind of seems a little, like, when LeBron James is worth more than Stan Lee, I have my gripes in the world, personally. That's all I think about. All right. Will we ever have someone like Stan Lee in our lifetime?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. I mean, especially, comics aside, comics aren't as big as they used to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, you have someone like Robert Kirkman, who is very influential with Walking Dead. But that's it. Like, I know he does other stuff as well, but you're not gonna see him bust out 300 separate characters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I just don't see anyone in our lifetime in the next 50, 60 years becoming as influential as Stan Lee.
I don't think there's somebody that's going to raise the bar like Stan Lee, but I think there's going to be a creative mind that comes through and creates very familiar characters that are transitioning from country to country. You know what I mean?
And it's nice that you're talking about yourself.
Well, we're going to get to that in a second. Kirkman is the one I think of, and you said 300 characters. I don't think he's going to make 300 characters, but the characters that he has made in The Walking Dead are huge. Rick Grimes, all the Grimes family, Daryl Dixon and Merle Dixon. Not in the comics, but he created them for the TV show. Negan. You know what I mean? Like, Walking Dead, he does Outcast. He has a lot of different comics. And once The Walking Dead's over, he's going to be the next name in comics to, we want to adapt this, we want to adapt that, we want to adapt everything. And is he going to be Stan Lee? Absolutely not.
And I think a lot of reason, too, is he's more adult.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
To where Stan Lee was, yes, he has adult theme. I mean, because look,
but it was geared for, like, the market was for kids.
Yeah.
But it would be cool that their parents could read the comics.
Yeah.
We haven't had anybody, like, listen, we were from, like, Tom McFarlane could have been someone like Stan Lee. Comes out with Spawn. You think he could create that whole universe? He, like, revitalized Venom and all these characters. Kind of peter off. I think the closest we're going to get is Kirkman. However, I have a crazy mind, crazy imagination, but I procrastinate too much. If I was given a year off, like, let's say I won Publishers Clearinghouse. Fucking no. It could have been the lottery. Let's say I won Publishers Clearinghouse, and I took 1 year off, right? I could probably write a book, a full book. I think I've created in my head thousands of characters with backstories and how they look and abilities. However, life has happened. I haven't been able to take the risks like Stan Lee has. One, I can't fucking draw for the life of me. But storyline, I can come up, like, you've seen it in the podcast. I come off the cuff with hypotheticals.
Yeah.
I think they seem pretty cool. I like them. You might just be my friend and say you like them. But I think Kirkman's the closest I'm going to get to it.
And it's funny that we both talked about.
Yeah.
We both brought up Kirkman.
Well, come on, man. I talk about Kirkman in every podcast.
Yeah.
You know that. And I think I've said that he was my next Stan Lee. The last question I'm going to ask you, and this is a hypothetical, you get to sit down with Stan Lee. Because we're going to meet him. We're going to hopefully meet him. But you get to sit down and talk to him. And that was on your bucket list. What's that? When we go back to get to know the geeks, you talked about sitting down and meeting Stan Lee and talking to him. What would you talk about?
I want to ask him, since he's my hero, who are his heroes? And who are his inspirations? And, who made him the man he is?
Do you think Tolkien's on the list of people that he idolized?
Maybe.
I mean, he created a fucking world, man.
Yeah. A language.
Yeah.
And then just, basically ask him, where do you come up with the shit you come up with?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, where... Like, I know where he came up with Spider-Man. He's seen a spider on a wall. Like, it'd be cool to walk on a wall. Flyman. Nah, you know what? Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And, I want to pick his brain.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the conversation, if I had with him, wouldn't last long because he's old. The only thing I would really want to talk about is how he didn't just give up when shit hit the fan, when characters weren't resonating. Because I feel like if my first character didn't work, because his first character was like Catman, or not Catman, it was it was like a horror, like sci-fi character, and it didn't work. I feel like if it didn't work for me, I'd just give up. Mm-hmm. Like, what keeps you driven? Like, what keeps him the passion alive? What keeps that flame lit? I want to know, because it's something, as I consider myself a creative mind, I really like to write. How do you stand tough in the face of adversity when things don't stick? And that's really what I want to know. He'd probably be like, oh, you just got to do it. You just got to be a true believer. So, I don't know. I just don't know. That's what I would ask them. Last thing I really want to ask you, and this isn't on anything that I've talked about. They're making a movie about Stan Lee.
Oh, yeah.
What are your thoughts on this? And it's not a biopic.
No, it's like
The biopic's coming from Active Geek Productions, by the way.
Starring Bryan Cranston.
Starring Michael B. Jordan. Could you imagine if I recasted him? Oh, Christ.
Yeah, I know it's like a fantasy kind of. He's like an adventurer.
It's like Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Stan Lee.
Stupid.
Is that the dumbest premise ever?
Stupid.
It's not. It's going to have nothing to do with comic books, right?
No.
He's going to be like trying to find like treasures, right?
All it is they're just going to use his name and give a skinny guy with a mustache.
God, that's so awful.
It's me.
When do you think we're gonna get a Stan Lee? Like, do you think that there's gonna be a Stan Lee biopic?
I think it should.
There's a Walt Disney one. There's always rumored to be a Walt Disney one.
Well, there has been one. Just wasn't very well known.
Who was in it?
The kid that played in Rookie of the Year.
Oh dear God!
It was called Walt Before the Mouse.
Okay. Oh, I heard about that. There's all this fan art. I love Instagram because there's like a lot of fan art of like what could be. Like Boss Logic makes all this stuff, right? But there was one a long time ago with a picture of Ryan Gosling on a train, dressed like Walt Disney with the mustache and everything. Spot on, dude.
Well, that
I think it was Ryan Gosling. I'll have to find it.
We'll go to Stan Lee and remember the movie. I think it came out last year or the beginning of this year was
The Infiltrator with Bryan Cranston. Oh fuck yeah!
They look just like him.
He did. I like Bryan Cranston as Stan Lee.
Bryan Cranston's an amazing actor.
And like he's stepping the bar up with like he's doing dramas and he's doing comedies now.
And he's doing Power Rangers.
Yeah, I would have loved him in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Still a chance. There really still is a chance. See how he does in Power Rangers. But let's should we open the Geek Gallery when we're talking about Stan Lee? The only thing that there is just the Slingshot stuff, and that's Marvel. Yeah. I'm not going to talk about trailers of like new movies that aren't Marvel related. So the Slingshot web series on ABC app, watch it. There's a good storyline. There's some familiar faces in it, so just check that out. Other than that, let's plug ourselves. Twitter, ActiveGeek _ Facebook, ActiveGeek. Instagram, The Active Geek. SoundCloud, Active Geek Podcast. iTunes, Active Geek Podcast, and the Geek Culture Cast Network. Check them out for all their sci-fi stuff. They also talk a lot about comics with Legends of the Panel podcast and Warp My TARDIS. And there's also a Microburst CWTV edition podcast. So check them out, subscribe, like all their stuff. And then we are on Spreaker under the Geek Culture Cast Network. Did I say that? If I didn't say it, I'll say it again. We're all over the webosphere is what we're going to call it.
The internet.
Yeah, and stay true believers. Excelsior.